Before we start, I need a favor. Let me know in the comments what's been done right or wrong. This also helps me create better content for you all, and check out our Creepy Tales playlist. The videos with the most views, likes, and comments will form the channel. And now we begin. Chapter 1. The Henderson House. Tommy Henderson wakes to the sound of fingernails scraping against wood, coming from inside his bedroom closet at exactly 3:17 a.m. The scratching is slow and deliberate, like someone trying to claw their way out from the inside, but when he calls for his mother, she finds nothing unusual and tells him it's probably mice in the walls. "There's nothing in there, sweetheart," Mom says after checking behind his hanging clothes, and Tommy nods as he replies, "Maybe I was dreaming." She kisses his forehead and returns to her bedroom, leaving Tommy alone with the closet that has gone silent again. But Tommy knows he wasn't dreaming, and he lies awake listening for the scratching to return. When it does, an hour later, it's accompanied by something worse. The sound of wet breathing, like someone with a chest cold trying to breathe through liquid in their lungs. The next night, Tommy pretends to be asleep when the sounds start again, keeping his eyes barely open so he can watch his closet door in the darkness. The scratching begins at 3 a.m. exactly, followed by that horrible wet breathing, and then something that makes his blood freeze. The slow creak of his closet door opening from the inside. What emerges shouldn't be able to fit through the doorway. Arms that are too long, with joints that bend in the wrong directions, attached to a torso that seems to stretch and compress like it's made of thick rubber. The thing moves with jerky, unnatural motions like a marionette controlled by someone who doesn't understand how human bodies are supposed to work. "Tommy?" It whispers in a voice that sounds almost familiar, and Tommy bites his tongue to keep from screaming as he responds silently in his mind, "That's not my name." The creature continues, "Tommy, come play with us. We have such wonderful games in the dark." The thing's head turns toward his bed with movements that are too fluid, rotating further than any human neck should allow, and Tommy sees what makes the voice sound familiar. It's wearing his mother's face. Not a mask or disguise, but actually wearing her features like they've been stretched over a skull that's the wrong shape and size. "Mommy," Tommy whispers despite himself, and the creature smiles with his mother's mouth but too many teeth as it responds, "Yes, sweetheart, it's Mommy. Why don't you come give me a hug?" The thing approaches his bed with that horrible jerky gait, its two long arms reaching toward him, while Mom's face stretches and distorts to accommodate the alien bone structure beneath. "I've been waiting for you," it says in Mom's voice, and Tommy pulls his blankets over his head as he whispers, "You're not my mom." "Of course I am," the creature insists, and Tommy feels the mattress compress as something sits on the edge of his bed, adding, "I love you so much, Tommy. That's why I want you to come with me to the special place behind the closet." Tommy peeks over his blanket and sees more movement in the closet doorway. Other shapes emerging from the darkness behind his hanging clothes, each one moving with that same unnatural motion, each one wearing a familiar face stretched over an impossible anatomy. There's Dad's face on something with arms like twisted branches, Uncle Pete's features grafted onto a torso that seems to be made of overlapping segments, and Grandma Henderson's sweet smile attached to something that appears to have too many vertebrae in its neck. "We're all here," says the thing wearing Mom's face, and Dad's voice adds, "The whole family is waiting for you, son." Uncle Pete's mouth opens as he continues, "We have such wonderful games to play. Games that last forever and ever." Tommy realizes with growing horror that these aren't just random monsters, they're using the faces of people he loves, speaking in voices he trusts, trying to convince him to come closer through emotional manipulation rather than simple terror. "You're not real," he whispers, but Grandma Henderson's voice responds gently, "Of course we're real, sweetheart. We're just different now." The creature wearing Mom's face adds, "Better now, stronger and more wonderful than we ever were when we were ordinary humans." "We've been watching you for so long," Dad's voice explains, and Uncle Pete nods as he says, "Learning about you, understanding what makes you happy and sad and scared." Grandma's familiar smile widens as she continues, so we could be perfect family for you in our special world. The thing with Mom's face reaches toward Tommy with fingers that are too long and have too many joints. Just take my hand, it says lovingly, and Tommy asks, what happens if I don't? The creature's expression doesn't change, but its voice becomes slightly less warm as it responds, then we'll have to drag you, and that would make us very sad. More shapes are emerging from the closet now, filling his bedroom with impossible anatomies wearing familiar faces. His teacher Mrs. Patterson, his friend Jake from school, even his dog Rusty who died last year. All of them calling his name with voices he recognizes attached to bodies that belong in nightmares. The beautiful thing about faces, says the creature with Mom's features, is that they make everything so much easier. You want to trust us because we look like people you love. Dad's voice adds, even when your mind tells you something is wrong, your heart recognizes us as family. Tommy pulls his blanket completely over his head, but he can hear them moving around his room with that horrible scraping, slithering sound. You can't hide forever, Grandma's voice says gently, and Mrs. Patterson adds, we know you're scared, but there's nothing to be afraid of. We just want to take you home with us. This is my home, Tommy whimpers, and Uncle Pete chuckles as he responds, no, sweetheart. This is just where you've been staying until we were ready for you. Mom's voice continues, your real home is behind the closet door, where families never fight and children never grow old and everyone plays together forever. The blanket is slowly pulled away from his face by fingers that feel wrong, too cold, too smooth, with joints that move in directions human fingers shouldn't bend. Tommy finds himself staring into his mother's loving eyes, set in a face he's known his entire life, attached to something that has never been human. Come with us willingly, the creature says in Mom's warm, familiar voice, and we promise the transition will be gentle, but if you fight us, we'll have to use methods that might be more uncomfortable. Tommy looks around his bedroom and sees dozens of familiar faces watching him with patient, hungry expressions, all of them wearing the appearance of people he's supposed to trust, all of them serving something that feeds on children who follow their loved ones into dark places they should never go. Chapter 2. The College Dorm. Sarah Martinez wakes to the sound of her roommate Jessica calling for help from inside their shared closet, her voice muffled but clearly distressed as she pleads, Sarah, please help me, I'm trapped in here and I can't get out. The problem is that Jessica left for home Friday afternoon and won't return until Monday evening, making it impossible for her to be stuck in their dorm room closet at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night. Jessica! Sarah calls out tentatively, sitting up in her narrow dorm bed, and the voice responds immediately, oh, thank God you're awake. I fell behind the clothes and something's blocking the door from this side. Sarah checks Jessica's bed, which remains empty with her weekend bag gone and no sign of recent occupancy, before asking, how did you get back so early? I never left, comes Jessica's familiar voice from the closet, sounding confused and slightly panicked as she continues, I've been trapped in here since yesterday. Didn't you hear me calling for help? Sarah approaches the closet door cautiously, noting that it opens normally from her side with no obstructions or jamming mechanisms. When she pulls it open, expecting to find Jessica crammed awkwardly behind their hanging clothes, she instead discovers something wearing Jessica's face perfectly but supported by a body that defies every law of human anatomy. The thing has Jessica's exact features, her bright green eyes, her distinctive freckle pattern, her slightly crooked smile that Sarah has seen thousands of times. But beneath that familiar face, the body is a writhing mass of pale flesh that seems to flow and reshape itself continuously, with appendages that might be arms or legs or something else entirely emerging from a torso that appears to have no fixed skeletal structure. Sarah, it says in Jessica's voice, reaching toward her with what might be a hand if hands were made of flowing tissue that could extend indefinitely, please help me, something's wrong with my body but I can't understand what's happening to me. Sarah stumbles backward, her mind struggling to process what she's seeing. "You're not Jessica," she whispers, and the creature's expression becomes hurt and confused as it responds, "Of course I'm Jessica. Why would you say that?" The thing's voice carries all of Jessica's speech patterns, her slight southern accent, even her habit of ending statements with questioning inflections. "Jessica went home for the weekend," Sarah says, backing toward her bed, and the creature nods eagerly as it replies, "I know I was supposed to go home, but something happened. I got confused and ended up trapped in here instead." The flowing mass beneath Jessica's face shifts and pulses as it continues, "I think something's wrong with my memory. Everything feels strange and distant." That's when Sarah notices movement in the depths of the closet behind the creature. More shapes stirring in the darkness beyond their hanging clothes, and as her eyes adjust to the dim light, she realizes the closet extends much further back than it should. The space behind their clothes appears to stretch into impossible distances filled with shadowy figures. "Come closer," the thing with Jessica's face pleads, and Sarah shakes her head as she responds, "Stay away from me." The creature's expression becomes sad and desperate as it says, "I need your help, Sarah. I can't move properly anymore, and everything hurts in ways I don't understand." More familiar voices call out from the impossible space behind the creature. "Sarah," comes her mother's voice from somewhere in the dark depths, "sweetheart, we're all here waiting for you." Her father's voice adds, "We've been so worried. We need you to come home with us." Sarah's heart races as she recognizes voice after voice emerging from the closet. Her high school best friend Amy, her ex-boyfriend Marcus, her favorite professor Dr. Chen. All of them calling her name with perfect vocal reproductions, all of them pleading for her to come closer. "How do you know these people?" she asks the creature wearing Jessica's face, and it smiles with genuine warmth as it responds, "We know everyone you care about. We've been learning about your relationships and connections so we could help you feel comfortable." "Learning how?" Sarah demands, and Professor Chen's voice answers from the darkness, "We've been watching you, Sarah. Studying your interactions and emotional patterns." Amy's voice adds cheerfully, "We know exactly how each person in your life speaks to you, how they make you feel safe and loved." The thing with Jessica's face extends its flowing appendages toward Sarah. "We can be your perfect family," it explains gently, and Marcus's voice agrees, "Better than we ever were in the real world, no arguments, no disappointments, no growing apart." Her mother's voice adds, "Just eternal love and connection in our special place." Sarah realizes with growing horror that these creatures have been monitoring her life somehow, collecting data about her relationships and emotional vulnerabilities. They know exactly which voices she trusts, which people she would follow anywhere, which emotional buttons to push to break down her resistance. "What do you want from me?" she asks, and Jessica's familiar face shows an expression of pure love as it responds, "We want to take care of you forever, to give you a family that will never leave or disappoint you." Dr. Chen's voice explains, "Human relationships are so fragile and temporary, but we can offer you connections that last forever." More figures emerge from the impossible depths of the closet, each one wearing a face Sarah recognizes but attached to those same flowing, shapeless bodies that seem to exist in a constant state of biological flux. Her childhood friend Katie, her grandmother who died last year, even her elementary school teacher Mrs. Rodriguez. All of them reaching toward her with appendages that barely qualify as human limbs. "We've been preparing this reunion for so long," her father's voice says warmly, and Amy giggles as she adds, "We can't wait to show you our home. It's so beautiful there, and no one ever has to say goodbye." The creature wearing Jessica's face takes a step forward, its flowing body moving with liquid grace despite having no apparent bone structure. "Just take my hand," it says in Jessica's most caring tone, and Sarah asks, "What happens to the real Jessica?" "I am the real Jessica," the creature insists, looking hurt by the question, and her mother's voice explains gently, "We're all the real versions of ourselves, just improved and perfected for eternal family life." Sarah backs against her dorm room door, fumbling for the handle while dozens of familiar faces watch her with patient, loving expressions. "You're not my family," she whispers, and her grandmother's voice responds sadly, "Of course we are, sweetheart. We're exactly who you remember us to be, except now we can be together forever without the pain of separation or loss." The creature with Jessica's face reaches the middle of the room, its flowing body leaving strange marks on the floor as it moves. "Don't make us chase you," it says with Jessica's characteristic blend of affection and playful threat, and Marcus's voice adds, "Running will only make the transition more difficult. It's so much easier when you come willingly." Sarah's hand finds the door handle as she realizes these things have turned every relationship she's ever valued into a weapon against her, using the faces and voices of people she loves to break down her defenses and lure her into whatever impossible space exists beyond her closet door. "We know you'll make the right choice," Dr. Chen's voice says confidently as Sarah yanks the door open, and her mother calls after her, "We'll be waiting here whenever you're ready to come home to your real family." Sarah flees into the hallway, but she can hear Jessica's voice calling sweetly from behind her, "I love you, Sarah, and I'll be right here in our room whenever you want to stop running from the people who care about you most." Chapter 3: The Suburban Family. The entire Wilson family wakes simultaneously at 3:37 a.m. to the sound of Grandma Rose calling to them from the hall closet, her voice exactly as they remember it despite her death from cancer 2 years ago. "Robert, Patricia, children," she calls warmly, "I've come back to see my beautiful family. Won't you come give your old grandmother a hug?" Robert Wilson sits up in bed, his heart pounding as he recognizes his mother's distinctive voice with its slight Irish accent and the pet names she used for each family member. "That's impossible," he whispers to his wife Patricia, who nods as she responds, "Your mother is buried in St. Mary's Cemetery. We were at her funeral." But Grandma Rose's voice continues calling from the hall closet, now with a note of sadness as she says, "I know you think I'm gone, but death isn't what people believe it to be. I've found a way to come back to the family I love so much." Their 10-year-old daughter Emma appears in their bedroom doorway, tears streaming down her face as she asks, "Daddy, is that really Grandma Rose?" Her 12-year-old brother Michael follows, adding, "She sounds exactly the same. How is that possible if she's dead?" Robert puts on his bathrobe and walks toward the hall closet, his family following behind as Grandma Rose's voice becomes more excited. "Oh, I can hear you coming," she says with the joy they remember from Christmas mornings, and Patricia whispers, "Robert, this has to be some kind of trick." He nods but continues approaching as he responds, "But it sounds so much like her." When Robert opens the hall closet door, he finds his mother standing among the winter coats, looking exactly as she did before the cancer took her weight and color. Her silver hair is perfectly styled, her blue eyes are bright and alert, and she's wearing the floral dress she was buried in, but something about her presence feels wrong in ways his mind struggles to identify. "Hello, my darling boy," Grandma Rose says, reaching toward Robert with arms that move slightly too smoothly, and he asks, "Mom, how are you here?" She smiles with familiar warmth as she responds, "I've learned that love is stronger than death. When families are meant to be together, nothing can truly separate them." Patricia notices that Grandma Rose casts no shadow despite the hall light shining directly on her, and when she points this out, the elderly woman chuckles as she explains, "Shadows are for the living, dear. I exist in a space between worlds now where the rules are different." Emma rushes forward to hug her grandmother, but Robert catches her arm as he notices something disturbing about his mother's eyes. They look exactly right. The same blue color, the same laugh lines, the same loving expression. But they don't blink, and they reflect light in a way that seems wrong for human eyes. "Grandma Rose," Emma says excitedly, "we missed you so much," and the figure responds, "I missed you too, sweetheart. That's why I've come to take you all home with me to a place where families never have to say goodbye." More movement stirs in the depths of the closet behind Grandma Rose, and Robert realizes the space extends much further back than their hall closet should reach. "Mom," he says slowly, "what's behind you in there?" "The rest of our family," she responds happily, and a familiar voice calls out from the darkness as his father adds, "Hello, son, it's been too long since we've all been together." Robert's father died 15 years ago in a car accident, but his voice sounds exactly the same, calling, "Patricia, you look as beautiful as the day Robert brought you home to meet us." Patricia backs away as she whispers, "This isn't possible. Your parents are both dead, Robert," but more familiar voices emerge from the impossible space behind the closet. Uncle Frank, who died in Vietnam, calls out, "Little Robbie, you've grown into such a fine man," and Aunt Margaret adds, "And those children. Oh, how we've watched them grow from our special place." Michael and Emma look confused and frightened as dead relatives they've only seen in photographs begin speaking to them with intimate knowledge of their lives. "Michael, we're so proud of your soccer achievements," comes Great Uncle Tom's voice, and Great Aunt Susan adds, "And Emma, your piano recitals have been beautiful. We've been listening to every note." "How can you know about our current lives?" Patricia asks, and Grandma Rose explains gently, "Death doesn't separate us from the people we love. We've been watching over you, learning about your days and dreams and hopes for the future." Robert notices that more figures are emerging from the depths of the closet, each one wearing the face of a deceased family member but moving with that same too smooth fluidity that seems wrong for human motion. "We've all been waiting for this reunion," his father says warmly, and Uncle Frank nods as he adds, "Preparing a special place where the whole family can be together forever." "What kind of special place?" Robert asks, and Grandma Rose's smile widens as she responds, "A home where no one ever gets sick or old or sad, where every day is like the best family gathering you've ever experienced." Aunt Margaret continues, "No more funerals, no more grief, no more watching loved ones suffer and disappear." The dead relatives begin stepping out of the closet into the hallway, and Robert notices that while their faces are perfect reproductions of people he loved, their bodies seem to flow and shift beneath their clothing like they're made of something more liquid than flesh and bone. "We've been so patient," his father explains, "learning about your family dynamics and relationships so we could offer you exactly what you need to feel complete." Great Uncle Tom adds, "We know Robert feels guilty about not visiting us more before we died. We can take away that guilt forever." Patricia grabs her children's hands as she realizes these creatures have been studying their family for years, understanding their emotional vulnerabilities and psychological need. "You're not our relatives," she says firmly, and Grandma Rose looks hurt as she responds, "Of course we are, dear. We're exactly who you remember us to be, just freed from the limitations of human mortality." "We know this is confusing," Robert's father says understandingly, "but fear is natural when faced with something wonderful that you don't understand yet." Uncle Frank nods as he continues, "We felt the same way when we first discovered the truth about death and family connections." The dead relatives begin surrounding the Wilson family, their movements coordinated like they're following a shared plan. "The beautiful thing about our new existence," Aunt Margaret explains, "is that we can offer you the same gift, eternal family unity, without the pain of separation or loss." Grandma Rose reaches toward Emma with arms that extend further than human arms should be able to stretch. "Just come with us willingly," she says in the loving tone Emma remembers from bedtime stories, and Robert's father adds, "Fighting will only make the transition more difficult for the children." Robert realizes that every closet in their house has been slowly opening during this conversation, and familiar voices are calling from multiple directions as more dead relatives emerge from dimensional spaces that shouldn't exist within their suburban home. "We've been preparing this family reunion for so long," Great Uncle Tom says with satisfaction, and Aunt Susan adds, "Every closet is a doorway now. Every room offers a path to our eternal gathering place." The Wilson family finds themselves surrounded by perfect reproductions of every relative who has ever died, all of them speaking with voices they remember and love, all of them reaching toward the living family members with appendages that promise comfort but feel wrong when they make contact. "Welcome home," Grandma Rose says warmly as the creatures begin closing in, "to the family reunion that will never end." Chapter 4. The Gateway Revelation. The truth about the closet creatures began revealing itself 40 years ago when the first dimensional tiers appeared in bedroom wardrobes across America, creating microscopic portals that allowed entities from the void realm to observe human families through the darkness behind hanging clothes. These interdimensional predators, known as the face weavers, discovered that humans possess a unique psychological vulnerability: the deep emotional trust placed in familiar faces and voices, making them perfect prey for entities capable of perfect mimicry. The face weavers exist in a reality where physical form is fluid and consciousness can be molded like clay, allowing them to absorb and replicate the appearance, voice, and memories of any human they study intensively. For decades, they have been using closets as observation posts, watching families through dimensional windows, learning speech patterns and relationship dynamics, collecting the emotional data necessary to create perfect human disguises. The feeding process requires more than physical consumption, explains Dr. Elena Vasquez, a dimensional researcher whose government team has been tracking the escalating disappearances, and her colleague Dr. Marcus Chen nods as he responds. The face weavers feed on the emotional trauma generated when humans are betrayed by the faces they trust most. Dr. Vasquez continues, they have discovered that terror mixed with love creates the most nourishing psychological energy for their species. What makes the face weavers particularly dangerous is their understanding of human psychology. They know that people will follow loved ones into dangerous situations despite obvious warning signs, that emotional bonds override logical thinking, that children especially will trust family faces even when attached to impossible anatomies. The entities have been systematically exploiting these vulnerabilities for 4 decades, perfecting their hunting techniques through countless experiments on isolated families. The closet portals began expanding 3 years ago, growing from microscopic observation windows to doorways large enough for full physical manifestation. Government agencies tracking the phenomenon estimate that over 50,000 closets across America now serve as active dimensional gateways, with new portals opening every week as the face weavers prepare for what their intercepted communications call the Great Harvest. Each successful hunt provides them with new face templates. Dr. Chen explains to the emergency response team, and Agent Sarah Rodriguez asks, "What do you mean by templates?" Dr. Chen responds, when they consume a human, they absorb that person's complete identity, appearance, voice, memories, emotional patterns, relationship knowledge. This absorption process allows the face weavers to impersonate not just their direct victims, but anyone those victims knew intimately. A creature that consumes a mother gains access to her memories of her children, her parents, her siblings, her friends, enabling it to perfectly mimic dozens of people using information stolen from a single harvest. They're building a database of human relationships, Dr. Vasquez realizes, and Agent Rodriguez nods grimly as she responds, creating the tools necessary for large-scale infiltration. Dr. Chen adds, every family they harvest expands their ability to target other families through shared social connections. The face weaver's ultimate goal is species replacement. Not simply killing humans, but taking their places so completely that the transition goes unnoticed by society. They have been testing their infiltration capabilities on isolated households, learning to mimic human behavior well enough to fool neighbors, co-workers, and even close friends for extended period. Recent surveillance footage from affected neighborhoods shows creatures wearing human faces attending parent-teacher conferences, going to work, participating in community events, all while gradually identifying new targets for harvest through their social interactions. They're not just hunting randomly anymore, Agent Rodriguez observes, and Dr. Vasquez confirms, they're conducting systematic infiltration of entire communities. The entity's patience is part of what makes them so dangerous. A face weaver can spend months perfectly impersonating a consumed human while gathering intelligence about extended family networks, workplace relationships, and social connections. When they finally reveal their true nature, it's usually as part of a coordinated effort to harvest multiple related targets simultaneously. The Wilson family case demonstrates their evolved tactics. Dr. Chun explains, reviewing the incident report, and Agent Rodriguez asks, "How so?" He responds, "They didn't just use one familiar face. They coordinated an assault using every deceased relative the family had emotional connections to, creating a psychological scenario where resistance became nearly impossible." The face weavers have also learned to exploit human grief and longing for deceased loved ones. They understand that people want to believe dead relatives can return, that families will ignore obvious warning signs when offered the possibility of reunion with lost loved ones. This emotional vulnerability has proven to be their most effective hunting tool. "The technology angle concerns me most," Dr. Vasquez admits, and Dr. Chun nods as he responds, "They're adapting to our communication systems faster than we anticipated." Agent Rodriguez asks, "What do you mean?" Dr. Vasquez explains, "Recent reports indicate they can now mimic voices through phone calls and video chats. They're learning to hunt through digital connections as well as physical proximity. The dimensional tears are also affecting the physical structure of buildings where portals manifest. Closets expand beyond their architectural boundaries, hallways stretch longer than floor plans allow, and rooms appear that don't exist on building blueprints. The face weavers are gradually reshaping human domestic spaces to serve as hunting grounds and infiltration bases. We estimate the current disappearance rate at approximately 2,300 people per day," Dr. Chun reports to the Emergency Council, and Agent Rodriguez responds, "That's nearly 1,000,000 people per year." Dr. Vasquez adds, "And the rate is accelerating as their infiltration network expands. Each successful harvest enables them to target larger groups more efficiently." The most disturbing aspect of the face weaver invasion is that it exploits humanity's greatest strength, the capacity for love and trust, as a fatal weakness. Every emotional bond becomes a potential weapon, every act of care becomes a vulnerability, every family gathering becomes an opportunity for predation. Traditional security measures are useless, Agent Rodriguez realizes, and Dr. Chun confirms. How do you protect against threats that wear the faces of people you love? Dr. Vasquez concludes, especially when they know exactly how those people would behave in any given situation, they've turned human psychology against itself. The face weaver's success rate approaches 100% because their targets never truly understand what they're facing until it's too late. By the time families recognize that something is wrong with their loved one's behavior, the creatures have already gathered enough emotional energy from the betrayal and terror to sustain themselves for months while planning their next hunt. According to recent FBI statistics, Agent Rodriguez announces to the assembled task force, approximately 2,300 people go missing in America every day with no explanation, never to be found or heard from again. Perhaps now you know where they really went. The closets are waiting, the portals are expanding, and somewhere in the void realm, entities that have learned to wear human love like a mask are preparing for the final phase of their harvest, when every family reunion becomes a trap, and every familiar face becomes a gateway to dimensional horror that feeds on the bonds between people who trust each other too much to recognize the predators hiding behind the eyes of everyone they love.